The bank statement was folded under a grocery flyer when I opened it at the kitchen counter. I was 33, married to Caleb for 6 years, and sure our house fund held more than $64,000. It didn't. My husband had been sending our savings to his sister's wedding vendors for months. The last transfer had cleared that morning. Why had he hidden it? I read the total twice. Then I checked the account on my phone. The balance matched the paper. Almost half our future was gone, and I had never agreed to spend $1 of it on Megan's wedding. At first I thought I was reading the vendor names wrong. One sounded like a hotel. Another looked like a florist. Then I saw the same payee from an invitation Megan had shown us over dinner. My stomach tightened. I thought that was the worst part. It wasn't. A message I had not seen yet would make the lie much harder to excuse. There were payments to the venue, the photographer, the caterer, and a rental company. They were spread across 5 months. The total was $28,400. I could trace each transfer in black ink. I could also see something worse. Several had landed one day after my paycheck or bonus hit the account. Caleb was still at work, so I had an hour alone with the statement. That hour changed the way I remembered the last 5 months. Every time he had said we were doing great on the house fund came back to me. So did every open house we had skipped because we wanted a stronger down payment. I had been packing lunch and delaying trips. He had been quietly spending the same money. I kept the statement on the counter. I did not hide it. I wanted him to see exactly what had ended my ordinary Tuesday. Tell me honestly what you would call it. Is it generosity when your spouse uses a shared future to impress his family? Or does it become betrayal the moment he knows you would say no? I did not have an answer yet. I only knew the numbers were real. I knew Caleb had made the transfers. I knew Megan's wedding was 3 weeks away. And I knew one more vendor balance was due before the weekend. By the time his key turned in the front door, I had stopped asking whether there was an innocent explanation. I was asking how long he had planned to keep me from finding out. Caleb walked in carrying takeout and talking about traffic. He kissed my cheek, set the bag down, and reached for plates. Then he saw the statement. His hand stopped in the cabinet. That pause told me more than any confession could have. "What's this?" I asked. He looked at the paper, then at me. "Erin, let me explain." I hated that sentence immediately. People do not say it before good news. I pointed to the total. "Start with why $28,400 is gone." He pulled out a chair, but he did not sit. He said Megan had fallen short on wedding costs. He said deposits had piled up. He said her fiancé, Owen, had covered what he could. Then Caleb used the word that was supposed to calm me. "It's a loan." I asked where the agreement was. He blinked. I asked when Megan would repay us. He said after the wedding. I asked how much she knew she owed. His jaw tightened. We didn't make it formal. That was his first mistake. His second was adding, "She's my sister. I wasn't going to hand her a contract like a stranger." I stared at him. "You didn't hand me a choice either." We had one rule for that account. Neither of us touched it without talking first. The rule was not buried in paperwork. It was a sentence we had repeated for 4 years. Caleb knew it because he had invented it after we opened the account. He once made me text him before moving $800 for a car repair. Now he had sent away more than $28,000. "Why didn't you ask me?" I said. He rubbed both hands over his face. "Because I knew you'd make this a whole thing." I laughed once. "It was not funny. You mean you knew I'd say no?" Caleb told me I was making the money sound stolen. I told him I had not used that word. He had. That quieted him for a second. Then he changed direction. Megan had been through enough wedding stress. Our fund would recover. We were not buying a house tomorrow. I had a steady job. He had a steady job. We could rebuild. Every sentence treated my work like a refillable resource. I asked one question. "Are there any more payments coming out?" He looked toward the statement. One small balance might still clear. I told him to stop it. He promised he would. That night, we ate cold noodles because neither of us touched the takeout until late. Caleb kept trying to pull the conversation toward intentions. He loved his sister. He wanted her day to feel special. He thought we could absorb the cost. I kept pulling it back to permission. You can love Megan with your money, I said. You cannot volunteer mine and call it love. He winced at that. I was not trying to win a line. I wanted him to understand the difference. By midnight, he had promised again that the wedding spending was over. I went to bed beside him and believed the promise more than I should have. Our marriage had not looked reckless before that week. Caleb was 35 and worked in commercial flooring sales. I handled purchasing for a regional grocery company outside Columbus, Ohio. Neither job sounded glamorous, but we were good at them. We paid bills on time. We drove older cars. We argued about normal things, like dishes and whose turn it was to call the internet company. Money had always been the part of our marriage I trusted most. That was why the statement felt so strange. It did not match the man I thought I had married. We had started the house fund 4 years earlier with $12,000 from our combined savings. After that, we treated it like a locked room. I transferred money after every paycheck. Caleb did the same. My annual performance bonus went there too. We wanted enough for a down payment, closing costs, and a cushion. The exact house kept changing in our minds. The rule did not. We were not going to become houseboard just to say we owned one. That plan had made me feel safe. It was boring in the best possible way. Megan was 28 and had always been close to Caleb. Their father left when they were teenagers, and Caleb had taken the older brother role seriously. He taught her to drive. He helped with college applications. He answered late-night calls when she hated her first job. I respected that bond. I had never asked him to choose between us. Megan and I were not best friends, but we got along. She sent me pictures of centerpieces. I helped her compare shoes. Nothing about our relationship explained why Caleb thought I needed to be kept in the dark. The wedding had grown over the year. At first, Megan and Owen planned a simple Saturday dinner. Then the guest list expanded. The venue changed. A photographer became a package with video. Flowers became flowers plus rentals. I noticed the upgrades, but I assumed they were paying for them. Caleb never said otherwise. Once, while Megan showed us a seating chart, I joked that weddings had their own gravity. Caleb smiled and said, "They've got it handled." I remembered that sentence after I found the statement. It had sounded casual then. Now it sounded practiced. My own weak spot was easy to name. I hated conflict that could turn into family history. I grew up in a house where one bad argument could be retold for 10 years. So I learned to solve problems early and quietly. Caleb knew that about me. Most of the time, it made us a good team. He was more impulsive, and I slowed us down. I was more cautious, and he pushed me to enjoy things, but a strength can become a handle if someone learns where to grab it. I did not see that yet. I still thought one serious conversation had fixed the problem. The next morning, Caleb made coffee before I came downstairs. He had already packed my lunch. It was his version of a peace offering. I meant what I said, he told me. No more wedding money. I asked whether he had called the vendors. He said the remaining balance was Megan's problem now. I asked whether he had told her that. He said he would. Then he kissed my forehead and left for work. I wanted to believe the marriage I knew had returned overnight. So I made my first bad decision. I did not move my paycheck. I left everything exactly where it was. At work, I tried to focus on an order problem with a produce supplier. Numbers usually settled me. They did not that day. Every spreadsheet reminded me of the statement. Around lunch, my friend Tasha noticed I had read the same email 3 times. She worked 2 desks over and knew enough about me to know silence was unusual. "Bad morning?" she asked. I said, "Bad bank statement." That was all I gave her. I didn't want my marriage to become office gossip. She nodded and said, "Then don't make any money decision while you're still shocked." It was simple advice. I should have taken more of it. I canceled a house showing scheduled for Saturday. The place was a small brick ranch with a fenced yard and a kitchen Caleb loved in the photos. I told the agent we needed to pause our search. She did not ask why. That tiny courtesy almost undid me. For 4 years, every deposit into that account had pointed toward a front door of our own. Now I was deleting appointments because my husband had spent the down payment on chair rentals and flowers. The loss was not just money. It was a plan I had organized my adult life around. Caleb was annoyed when I told him about the canceled showing. "You didn't have to do that," he said. I asked what he thought we would use for the down payment. He said the account was still healthy. I asked him to say the balance out loud. He would not. That was when I understood we were having two different arguments. I was talking about a broken agreement. He was talking about whether the remaining amount was still large enough to make my anger inconvenient. "We're pausing the house," I said. "Until I understand exactly what happened." His face hardened. "You're punishing both of us." For the next 2 days, Caleb acted wounded rather than guilty. He answered questions with sighs. He slept turned toward the wall. He kept saying he had been trying to help. I kept saying help does not require a secret. We went in circles until I stopped. I told him I wanted the full history of the account that weekend. He said fine. Then he asked whether I planned to audit every decision he made for the rest of our marriage. "No," I said, "just the ones you made with money we both earned." He called that cold. I called it accurate. Friday morning, my phone buzzed while I was standing near the office printer. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the bank name. A transfer for $3,800 had posted to the caterer. For a few seconds, I felt oddly calm. There was no mystery left. Caleb had promised me twice that he was done. Then he sent more money. The account balance fell again before my eyes. I took a screenshot. My hands were steady. That scared me more than shaking would have. I had crossed from shock into evidence. I called Caleb from an empty conference room. "Did you send the caterer $3,800? There was a long pause. It was already committed. I asked what that meant. He said Megan would have lost a deposit if the balance did not clear. I reminded him of his promise. He said this payment was different because it had been in motion before our conversation. I asked when he scheduled it. Another pause. "Yesterday." I closed my eyes. "Then it wasn't in motion. You put it in motion." He said I was twisting words. I ended the call before I started yelling. That transfer became the first clean line in my mind. Before it, Caleb could claim panic, bad judgment, or loyalty. After it, he had knowingly repeated the exact behavior I had told him was breaking our marriage. The amount mattered. The timing mattered more. I returned to my desk and finished the purchase order I had been working on. Then I changed my direct deposit. Starting with my next paycheck, my salary would go to an individual checking account. I left enough in our joint checking to cover my share of household bills. I did not touch the remaining house fund. I knew changing the deposit without telling Caleb would give him something to throw back at me. That was my second mistake. I was tired of asking permission to protect money he had already ignored, so I made the change first and told him that evening. He stared at me across the kitchen. "You moved your paycheck," he said. I redirected it. His laugh was sharp. "Behind my back." The words landed. I could hear the hypocrisy, but I could also hear my own choice. "Yes," I said. "I should have told you before I did it. I am telling you now, and I'm not changing it back." Caleb seized on my admission. For 10 minutes, the discussion became my deposit instead of his transfers. He said I was escalating. He said separate money was how marriages broke down. He said we were supposed to be a team. I let him finish. "A team needs consent," I said. "You don't get to use the word team after making me the last person to know what our team paid for." He had no answer that did not return to Megan. Her wedding was close. She was stressed. He could not embarrass her. That word stayed with me. Embarrass. He was more afraid of looking unreliable to his sister than being unreliable to his wife. Saturday morning, I printed 6 months of statements. I spread them across our dining table and marked every wedding payment with a yellow pen. Caleb watched from the doorway. He said nothing at first. The pattern was worse on paper. A venue payment followed my spring bonus by 1 day. A photographer payment followed Caleb's commission check. 2 smaller transfers came right after regular paydays. None of that proved motive by itself. It did prove timing. Whoever made the transfers had been watching when cash arrived. There was no random emergency. There was a sequence. I asked Caleb to sit with me and identify each payment. He named most of them without checking. That told me he had not been casually helping when a crisis popped up. He knew the wedding budget line by line. $6,800 had gone toward the venue. $3,000 went to photography. Other payments covered food, rentals, flowers, and smaller deposits. The latest caterer payment brought the total to $32,200. I wrote that number in words on a notepad. Caleb looked away. "It adds up fast," he said. "That's what I was afraid you'd see." His sentence stopped me. "You were afraid I'd see the total?" I asked. Caleb nodded once. Then he tried to explain. Each payment had felt manageable. Megan would call with a shortfall. He would help. Then another bill arrived. By the time the amount looked serious, he felt trapped by what he had already promised. That part sounded human. I could imagine the slide. What I could not excuse was the choice he made each time the account refilled. "You weren't trapped," I said. "You kept choosing the next transfer because telling me felt harder." He did not deny it. I asked again for the repayment plan. Caleb said Megan and Owen expected generous wedding gifts. They could start paying us after the honeymoon. I asked whether Megan had agreed to a monthly amount. No, I asked whether Owen knew the total. Caleb thought so. I asked whether Megan knew the money came from our house fund. He said she knew we were helping. The wording was slippery. "Did she know I agreed?" I asked. He stood up and carried his coffee to the sink. "Why does that matter now?" That was the first moment I wondered whether Megan had been lied to too. I did not call her right away. I wanted to give Caleb one chance to answer plainly. "What exactly did you tell your sister about me?" I asked. He rinsed a clean mug for too long. Then he said, "I told her we wanted to help." I felt the room narrow. "We." He shut off the faucet. "I wasn't going to make it sound like you were against her wedding." I said, "I didn't know I was paying for it." He told me that was not the point. To him, the point was keeping peace. To me, the point had become much bigger. He had not only used my money, he had used my name as permission. I picked up my phone and opened my message thread with Megan. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Caleb saw what I was doing. "Don't drag her into this," he said. I looked up. "She's already in it." He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Erin, please, let me fix it." I asked how. He said he would talk to her after the wedding. I almost laughed. The wedding was the deadline creating every new payment. Waiting until after it meant letting the lie finish its job. I typed one sentence. "Hey, can you tell me what repayment plan you and Caleb discussed for the wedding money?" Then I hit send. Megan replied in less than a minute. "Repayment plan for what?" I read the message 3 times. Caleb could see my face change. He said my name, but I held up one hand. Another message arrived. "Caleb said you guys wanted to cover this as our wedding gift." Is something wrong? There it was. No legal document, no hidden account, just a text that split the story in 2. Caleb had told me the money was a loan. He had told Megan it was a gift from both of us. Both versions could not be true. Megan called before I answered. Her voice was bright for half a second. Then she heard mine. I asked whether Owen was with her. He was at work. I asked her to tell me exactly what Caleb had said. She went quiet. Months earlier, he had offered to take care of the gaps. When she resisted, he said we had talked about it and wanted to contribute. Later, he told her not to worry about paying us back. He said we were doing well and wanted her to have one day without money stress. She sounded smaller with every sentence. Erin, I thought you knew. I believed her. That surprised me. Maybe I should have been angry at Megan too, but confusion was all over her voice. She started listing things she could cancel. I told her to stop for a minute. I'm not calling to make you fix this right now, I said. I needed to know what you were told. She asked how much had come from us. When I told her $32,200, she made a sound like the air had left her. He told me it was nowhere near that. Caleb was standing 10 feet away, hearing only my side. His face had gone pale. Megan asked whether I had agreed to any of it. I said no. She was silent for several seconds. Then she said, I have screenshots. Caleb turned toward me when he heard that. Megan explained that some of his offers came by text because she kept telling him the wedding was getting too expensive. He had written that I was on board. He had even joked that I was the organized one, so if I was fine with the spending, she should stop worrying. I asked her to send the messages. She did. The first screenshot arrived while we were still on the phone. The messages were not dramatic. That made them worse. Caleb sounded casual, confident, generous. Erin and I talked. We want to do this for you. A week later he wrote, don't start cutting things now. We've got the rest. In another message, Megan asked whether she should treat the money as a loan. Caleb replied that it was a gift and told her to enjoy her wedding. My name appeared several times. I had never been part of any of those conversations. The yellow bank statement was on the table beside my phone. One document showed what he spent. The messages showed the story he built around it. When the call ended, Caleb said, "You blindsided her." I looked at him for a long moment. Of all the things he could have said, he chose that. "No," I said. "You did. You just arranged it so I would be standing there when she found out." He told me I was being cruel. I asked whether he had lied to Megan because he wanted to look generous. He said it was not about looking generous. I asked what it was about. His answer came too quickly. "She needed somebody to come through for her." I nodded. "And you needed that somebody to be you." That was the first time Caleb got truly angry. Not loud. Sharp. He said I was turning one bad decision into a character trial. He reminded me of every time he had helped my family move furniture, fixed my mother's porch rail, or driven across town when Tasha's car died. Those things were true. They were also free choices he had made with his own time. "You keep listing kindness like it creates a credit line," I said. "It doesn't." He pushed his chair back. "So now I'm some thief because I helped my sister?" I answered carefully. "You're my husband who lied to 2 women, so neither one could stop you." He left the house for most of the afternoon. I did not know where he went. I did not chase him. Instead, I saved the screenshots in a folder and put the paper statement in a plain envelope. I hated how formal that felt. I hated needing it more. Then I checked every account we shared. There were no other large transfers. The credit cards were current. Our rent and utilities were paid. I found no secret debt. That mattered. The problem was serious enough without inventing a bigger one. Caleb had not built a hidden financial empire. He had made one sustained, selfish choice and protected it with lies. By evening, Megan had sent me a longer message. She apologized 3 times. I told her once was enough. She had accepted a gift she believed both of us had offered. That was not the same as taking money she knew was secret. She said she and Owen were meeting the venue manager Monday. They could cut the guest count, drop the upgraded bar package, and return some rentals. She did not know what could still be refunded. "Please don't pay anything else," she wrote. For the first time since I found the statement, someone in Caleb's family said the exact thing I needed to hear. Caleb came home after dark. He had been with Megan. I knew before he told me because his anger had changed shape. "She thinks she has to gut the wedding now," he said. I asked what he had told her. He said the truth. I asked which truth. He glared at me. "The truth that we're having a marital issue and she got caught in it." I shook my head. No, she got placed in it. He said I was splitting hairs. Then he told me Megan had cried. The accusation was obvious. I was supposed to feel responsible for her pain because I had stopped the lie from protecting her. That night, we slept in separate rooms for the first time in our marriage. Caleb took the couch because he refused the guest room on principle. I did not understand the principle. I only understood the distance. I lay awake and listened to the house settle. At 2 a.m, I opened the banking app again. The balance had not changed. I checked twice anyway. Trust had turned me into a person who needed confirmation for ordinary facts. That made me angrier than the lost sleep. I did not want a marriage where safety required surveillance. Monday brought the next practical consequence. Megan called at lunch. The venue would let them reduce the guest count, but some deposits were already non-refundable. The wedding could still happen. It would be smaller. She sounded embarrassed, but also relieved. Honestly, we should have done this months ago, she said. Owen had wanted to cut back sooner. She had kept going because Caleb insisted the money was handled. That detail landed hard. His secret spending had not merely rescued an existing plan. It had encouraged the wedding to grow beyond what Megan and Owen could afford. I asked Megan one question I had been afraid to ask. Did Caleb ever tell you I was excited to pay for this? She hesitated. Then she said yes. He had told her I wanted our gift to be something meaningful instead of another appliance. I closed my eyes. The lie had been personalized. It was not just "we can help." He had given me a motive, a voice, and an opinion. Megan apologized again. I stopped her. I need you to hear me. You are not responsible for what he said I wanted. She exhaled. Then neither are you responsible for saving the plan he made. That sentence stayed with me all afternoon. I had been treating the wedding deadline like a fire alarm. Everything felt urgent because vendors had dates. But urgency does not create consent. A deadline can make a bad choice expensive. It does not make the choice yours. I wrote those thoughts in a notebook beside my work calendar. Not because they were profound, because I needed something simple to read when Caleb made the situation sound complicated. There were only 2 facts I had to protect. I had not agreed to the spending. I was not agreeing to more. Caleb tried a softer approach that evening. He brought home my favorite soup and asked if we could start over. We sat at the table without the statement between us. He admitted he had lied to Megan. He admitted he had lied to me. He said he had been ashamed to tell either of us once the first few payments were made. That was the closest he had come to owning the problem. I listened. Then he said, "But we can still fix the wedding without making this a disaster." The word but erased half the apology before it finished landing. He explained that one final balance was due at the end of the week. $6,200. If it was not paid, Megan would have to cut the catering package even further and lose some options she had already chosen. Caleb did not have enough in his personal checking account. The joint savings was now off limits because I was watching it. Then he looked at me and mentioned my emergency reserve. I kept about $9,000 in an individual account from before our marriage. He knew it existed. He had never asked for it before. "Absolutely not," I said. Caleb leaned forward. "Hear me out." I told him I had heard enough. He said the $6,200 would keep Megan from scrambling days before the wedding. We could treat it as his debt to me. He would repay me from future commissions. I asked why his debt should start with money leaving my account. He said because I had the cash. That answer was so blunt I almost admired it. "Having access to money is not the same as owing it to you," I said. He pressed his palms flat on the table. "I'm not asking for me." I looked at him. "You are exactly who is asking." He said the family would know if the wedding changed again. People would ask questions. Megan would be humiliated. I asked whether he meant Megan would be humiliated or he would be. He stood up. "Why are you obsessed with making this about my ego?" I said. "Because Megan is willing to cut the wedding, you're the one refusing to let her." He did not answer. That silence was the second major turn for me. I finally saw what the money had been buying. It was not just flowers or food. It was Caleb's identity as the brother who always came through. I asked him what would happen if I said no. He said Megan would have to change the menu, reduce staff, and probably cut another group of guests. None of that sounded pleasant. None of it sounded catastrophic either. The wedding would still happen. The people getting married still wanted to marry each other. There would still be food, music, and family. Caleb had been describing every downgrade as ruin because ruin made my refusal sound cruel. Once I separated the wedding from his pride, the pressure lost some of its power. The next morning, I moved the paper statement from the kitchen drawer to my work bag. I did not want Caleb throwing it away during an argument. I also backed up Megan's screenshots. Then I opened a new savings account in my name for future deposits. I did not move money out of the joint house fund. I did not want to create a second fight over ownership. I simply stopped adding fresh money to a place where consent had failed. That distinction mattered to me. Protection was not revenge. I wanted a boundary I could explain without changing the subject. At lunch, Tasha asked whether the bad statement had gotten worse. I told her the smallest version of the truth. My husband had spent joint savings on his sister's wedding without telling me, then asked for more from my separate account. She stared at me for a second. "Are you safe at home?" she asked. I knew what she meant. I told her yes. Caleb had never threatened me physically. He was angry and defensive, not violent. She nodded. "Okay, then figure out what you need before you figure out what he deserves." That sentence was useful. It moved me away from punishment and toward decisions. What did I need? I wrote a list after work. I needed my income protected. Done. I needed no more wedding payments. Clear. I needed full financial transparency if the marriage continued. I needed Caleb to stop using Megan's deadline as leverage. And I needed space to decide whether trust could be rebuilt. The last one scared me. I had kept thinking the goal was to return to normal. Maybe normal was no longer available. Maybe the honest goal was to see what remained after the lie stopped getting funded. I looked at short-term apartments that night. I did it on my phone in the guest room with the door closed. I was not packing yet. I was not threatening divorce. I wanted to know whether I could afford a month somewhere else if the house became one long argument. There was a furnished studio 10 minutes from work. It was plain and overpriced, but available. I saved the listing. Knowing I had an option changed my breathing. I had spent days reacting to Caleb's choices. For the first time, I was planning one of my own. Caleb noticed the distance. He asked whether I was leaving him. I told him I did not know. That answer frightened him more than anger had. He sat on the edge of the guest bed and finally stopped talking about the wedding. "I screwed this up," he said. I agreed. He asked what he could do. I told him to stop trying to make the consequences disappear before anyone could see them. "Let Megan change the wedding," I said. "Let people ask why. Let me be angry. Let the house plan be paused. You keep calling every consequence a disaster because you want the lie to end without costing you anything." For a moment, he seemed to hear me. Then his phone rang. It was Megan. He stepped into the hallway. I could hear only pieces: guest count, final invoice, Friday. When he came back, the old urgency was back too. "They need an answer by tomorrow night," he said. I almost smiled from exhaustion. "Then they can answer." He said, "You know what I mean." I did. He meant I still had time to rescue him from having to admit he could not finish what he promised. "My answer is no," I said. This time I did not explain it twice. Megan called me the next day and asked if we could meet without Caleb. We chose a coffee shop near her apartment. She arrived with no makeup and a folder under her arm. I almost laughed at the symmetry. I had brought my envelope with the statement. She had printed the vendor changes. We sat by the window and compared facts. The wedding was not collapsing. It was becoming smaller. They had cut 22 guests, dropped the upgraded bar, and returned several rental pieces, Owen had picked up extra shifts. Megan had used part of her own savings. The remaining problem was still the catering balance Caleb wanted me to cover. Megan slid her phone across the table and showed me more of Caleb's messages. I did not need them as legal proof. I needed to understand the pattern. He had stepped in every time she considered cutting costs. Don't worry about it. We've got you. Erin thinks this is worth it. The words made me feel used in a new way. He had borrowed my reputation for caution to make his promise sound safe. If Erin agreed, then surely the money was real. I had become the invisible guarantor of a promise I had never heard. Megan looked miserable. I should have asked you directly, she said. I told her maybe she should have, but I was not going to make her carry Caleb's deception for him. She nodded, then surprised me. I don't want the $6,200. I said I was not offering it. She gave a tired little smile. Good, I need to say that out loud anyway. She and Owen had already asked the caterer for a simpler package. It would work. The final invoice would drop. Some guests might complain. She was done letting a party decide what kind of person she was. I asked how Caleb had reacted. Megan looked toward the window. Badly. He had told her she was panicking and making choices she would regret in photos forever. That sounded like him when he was scared. He pushed harder when other people accepted limits. Megan said she finally asked him why her wedding mattered more to him than it did to her. He had no answer. Then she said something I did not expect. I think he needed to be the one who saved it. Hearing his sister name, the same thing I had seen made the whole situation feel less like my private interpretation. Before we left, Megan asked whether I wanted the money back from her. I told her the honest answer. Yes, I wanted the house fund restored. No, I did not believe she alone owed $32,200 for a gift she was told was ours. Caleb and I would have to sort out what his choices meant inside our marriage. If she and Owen wanted to repay some of what they had received, we could discuss that later in writing. But I would not turn the week before her wedding into a debt collection. Her shoulders dropped. Thank you, she said. I told her not to thank me for refusing to repeat Caleb's mistake. That evening, I told Caleb about the meeting before he could hear it from Megan. He was furious anyway. So now you two are making decisions about my money, he said. I pointed out the phrase. Your money, he stopped. I waited. He changed it to our money. The correction did not help him. I told him Megan did not want another payment. He said she was emotional. I told him she was an adult. He said she did not understand what she was giving up. It's her wedding, I said. Why are you the one who can't let the upgrades go? He walked away before answering. The next morning, the caterer sent Megan a revised invoice. The simpler package reduced the balance enough for her and Owen to cover it. The crisis Caleb had presented as impossible was solved by cutting things they could not afford. No miracle, no rescue. Just a smaller menu and fewer extras. Megan forwarded me the confirmation. I felt relief for about 30 seconds. Then Caleb came into the kitchen holding his phone. He had received the same message. This is embarrassing, he said. I looked at him. For whom? He did not answer. Caleb's mother, Diane, learned about the changes that afternoon. Megan told her, not me. I had hoped to keep the circle small, but weddings are machines for spreading information. Diane called Caleb first. Then she called me. I almost let it go to voicemail. I answered because I was tired of imagining conversations. Diane did not yell. She asked whether Caleb had really used our house savings. I said yes. She asked whether I had agreed. I said no. There was a long silence. He told me you too wanted to help, she said. Of course he had. I did not give Diane every detail. I told her the wedding would still happen and Megan had a workable plan. I told her Caleb and I were dealing with the rest privately. Diane sounded embarrassed. Then she said, he has always taken care of Megan. I heard the sentence for what it was, not an excuse exactly, more like a family habit. Caleb had been praised for fixing things since he was a teenager. Somewhere along the way, maybe no one taught him that rescuing someone with another person's resources is not the same thing as sacrifice. Diane asked if she could contribute to the catering balance. I told her that was between her and Megan. I also told her not to send money to Caleb for the wedding. I did not want another round of hidden transfers moving through him. She agreed. Then she said something that made me unexpectedly sad. I wish he had just told you he couldn't afford what he promised. So did I. That was the center of it. Caleb had not lacked money first. He had lacked the willingness to disappoint people. The money became the tool he used to postpone that feeling. That night, I showed Caleb the apartment listing I had saved. I did not wave it at him like a threat. I put my phone on the table and told him I was considering a temporary separation after the wedding. His face changed. He asked if I was serious. Yes. He said we could work this out without leaving. I said maybe we could, but I could not think clearly while every conversation turned into a negotiation over whether my boundary was too harsh. I needed space. He asked whether I had already signed anything. I said no. That part was still my decision to make. Caleb looked more frightened than he had when I found the statement. For the first time, the consequence was not abstract. The house purchase was paused. My paycheck was separate. Megan had cut the wedding. Now I might leave the house for a while. He started apologizing fast. I stopped him. Do not apologize to keep me here tonight, I said. Figure out what you're apologizing for. He went quiet. I could see how badly he wanted a task. Call someone, pay something, fix something. There was no quick task. Trust is cruel that way. It breaks in an instant and returns, if it returns, on a schedule nobody controls. The day before the final vendor deadline, Megan asked the four of us to meet. She wanted Caleb, Owen, me, and her at our dining table. She said there were still decisions about guest changes, and she wanted no more messages passed through other people. I agreed. Caleb did too, though he looked uneasy. I knew what the meeting would really be about. Not the menu, not the $6,200. It would be the first time all four people affected by his promises sat in one room with the same information. I prepared for that meeting in a way that felt almost absurd. I put the original bank statement in the envelope. I printed the messages Megan had sent me. I wrote down the current account balance. I also wrote one sentence at the top of a blank page. I will not pay another wedding expense. That was for me, not them. I knew Caleb's talent. He could turn a simple boundary into a debate with 10 side roads. I did not want to get lost in them. The answer was already decided. Before everyone arrived, I called the furnished studio and asked whether it was still available. It was. The manager could send a short lease by email. I asked her to do that. I did not sign it yet. I wanted the option in front of me, not hidden in a browser tab. Then I made coffee, cleared the dining table, and placed the envelope at my seat. Caleb watched me from the kitchen. "Are you really bringing paperwork into this?" he asked. "You brought the paperwork into this months ago," I said. "I'm just letting everyone see it." Megan and Owen arrived together. Owen looked tired but calm. He carried a revised vendor sheet. Megan sat across from Caleb. Nobody touched the coffee. For a minute, the room felt too ordinary for what was coming. Then Megan put the revised invoice on the table. "We can cover this version," she said. Caleb barely looked at it. He asked what had been cut. She listed the smaller guest count, the simpler bar, fewer rentals, and a shorter service window. His mouth tightened with every item. "You don't have to do all that," Caleb said. Megan answered before I could. "Yes, we do." He turned to me. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid." I kept my hands in my lap. "You were trying to avoid admitting what you could afford." He shook his head. "No. I was trying to keep one important day from turning into a budget meeting." Owen finally spoke. It became a budget meeting the second money ran out. Caleb looked at him like he had switched teams. That expression told me how he saw the room. He was still counting allies instead of facts. Caleb picked up the revised invoice. He said the difference was only $6,200 from the original plan. He knew I had that much in my reserve. He said it like the existence of the money made the argument reasonable. Megan's face changed. "You asked Erin for her personal savings?" she said. Caleb told her not to make it sound dramatic. I felt something settle in me. This was the pressure wave I had expected. He needed the number to sound small, the deadline to sound huge, and my refusal to sound personal. I opened the envelope and slid the bank statement onto the table. The yellow marks were still there. "This is what has already been paid," I said. Owen leaned closer. Megan did not need to, she had seen the total. Caleb looked at the paper and sighed. "We all know this already." I shook my head. "No, we know different versions of it." Then I put the printed messages beside the statement. "This says you told Megan the money was a gift from both of us. You told me it was a loan she would repay." The room went completely still. Caleb looked at Megan. "I was trying to protect you from stress." She stared back at him. "By lying to me?" He said he had planned to sort it out later. Owen asked what later meant. Caleb did not answer. I did. After the wedding, when the money was gone and nobody could undo the spending, Caleb snapped that I was making him sound calculating. I said, "Then tell us the version that isn't." He opened his mouth, stopped, and rubbed the edge of the invoice with his thumb. For the first time, Caleb admitted the sequence without decorating it. Megan had called about the first deposit. He paid it. Then another bill came. He thought I would be angry, so he did not tell me. He told Megan we had agreed because he did not want her to feel guilty. Each new payment made the first lie harder to confess, so he kept going. He said he knew it was wrong by the time my bonus came in. He also knew the venue payment was due. "I thought I could replace it before Erin noticed," he said. There it was, not confusion, a plan to outrun discovery. I asked how he expected to replace more than $30,000. Caleb said commissions, time, and whatever Megan could repay later. Megan flinched. "You told me not to repay you." He looked at her. "I was trying to make you feel better." She said, "You keep saying that like making people feel better is more important than telling them what's true." I watched his shoulders drop. Megan had finally named the habit without anger. He could dismiss my words as marital conflict. He could not dismiss the same pattern coming from his sister. Caleb pushed back from the table. Then he looked at me and said the sentence I had been waiting for. "We already paid for most of it. You're really going to ruin my sister's wedding over money?" The room seemed to sharpen around the words. Megan said his name, but I held up a hand. I wanted to answer him directly. "I'm not ruining her wedding," I said. "I'm refusing to let you finish paying for it with a future you promised me." Nobody spoke after that. The line was not planned. It was simply the truest sentence I had left. Caleb told me I was choosing money over family. I asked him whose money he meant. He said ours. I asked whose decision it had been. He said his, then immediately added that he had made it for family. "That's the problem," I said. "You keep using family as a word that turns your choice into my duty." I pointed to the statement. "Those transfers were your decisions. This next payment would be mine. My decision is no." He looked at Megan, maybe expecting her to object. She did not. She folded her arms and said, "Mine is no too." Owen slid the revised invoice toward Caleb. "The wedding is covered at this level," he said. "We can afford it." Caleb stared at the page. He said it was not what Megan had wanted. Megan answered, "It is what we can pay for." He told her she would regret cutting people. She said maybe she would. Then she added, "Regret is cheaper than pretending Erin agreed to fund me." That was the moment Caleb finally lost control of the room, not because anyone shouted, because his rescue was no longer wanted. My phone buzzed beside the envelope. It was the email from the studio manager with the lease. Caleb glanced at the screen. He recognized the address from our earlier conversation. "You're doing this now?" he asked. I said yes. I opened the document, read the terms one more time, and signed the 1-month lease. My hand shook at the last stroke. I did it anyway. "I'm moving out Sunday," I said. "Not forever. I don't know what forever is yet. But I need a month where every boundary is not a negotiation in my own kitchen." Caleb looked stunned. "You're leaving me because of one mistake?" I shook my head. "No, I'm leaving for a month because you made the same choice over and over, then made me responsible for fixing the consequences." He said he had apologized. I said I had heard him. An apology does not restore access. That sentence mattered more than any speech. My paycheck was already separate. My reserve stayed mine. The house search was paused. Now my physical space would be separate too. Each boundary matched the thing he had treated as automatic. Megan started crying then, quietly and angrily. She told Caleb she loved him. She also told him she did not want to be the reason he kept lying to his wife. "You made me part of this without asking me," she said. "Stop calling that taking care of me." Caleb looked at her like the floor had shifted. He had expected gratitude. He got a boundary from both women instead. Owen put one hand over Megan's. He did not say anything. He did not need to. The wedding was theirs again, including the limits. Caleb asked what happened to the money already spent. I told him the joint account would stay untouched until we had a written plan. I was not draining it. I was not adding to it either. He would cover his normal share of rent and bills from his income. I would do the same. After the wedding, we could review the house fund together and decide how he would rebuild the amount he had spent. Megan and Owen could decide later whether they wanted to repay any part of the gift they had accepted in good faith. Nobody was signing promises that night. He asked whether I was planning to divorce him. I told him the truth. "I don't know." His face crumpled for the first time. I did not rush to comfort him. That was hard. 6 years of marriage trained my body to move toward his pain. I stayed in my chair. "What I know is that I won't buy certainty by giving up the boundary that finally made you stop." He nodded once. It was small. It was the first response all night that did not contain an argument. We ended the meeting with no dramatic exit. Megan took the revised invoice home. Owen took the extra copies of the vendor list. I put the statement and screenshots back in the envelope. Caleb stayed at the table after everyone left. I washed 4 untouched coffee cups. The kitchen was quiet. The wedding was smaller. My marriage was uncertain. My emergency reserve still held every dollar it had held that morning. For the first time since the statement arrived, the crisis was no longer moving because Caleb had decided it should. The wedding happened 3 days later. It was smaller than the version in Megan's original binder, and nobody died from the missing upgrades. The room was warm, the food was good, and Megan laughed through most of the night. A few relatives asked why the guest list had changed. She told them the truth in one sentence. "We decided to have the wedding we could afford." Nobody needed a family scandal attached to it. Caleb was quiet. He gave a short toast and did not mention what he had paid for. I was grateful for that restraint. I moved into the studio the next morning with 2 suitcases, my laptop, and a grocery bag full of things I forgot to pack properly. Caleb helped carry 1 box to my car. He did not ask me to stay. Before I left, he handed me the house fund statement in its envelope. "You should keep this," he said. I almost told him I did not want it. Then I took it. The paper was not a weapon. It was a record. I had spent weeks wishing I could return to the woman who had never opened it. By then, I did not want to be her again. The first week apart was ugly in ordinary ways. I missed my own mattress. I missed Caleb's terrible coffee. I hated eating dinner at a tiny table that wobbled, but my phone stopped buzzing with arguments. My paycheck landed where I expected. The joint accounts did not move except for normal bills. Caleb sent me a simple spreadsheet showing his plan to restore the house fund from future commissions and regular transfers. I checked the math. It was realistic and slow. For once, he did not promise a miracle. We met once a week at a public library, cafe, because neither of us wanted the house to become a courtroom. Caleb stopped asking when I was coming home. He started answering questions without defending the reason I had asked them. He also apologized to Megan without asking her to reassure him. She told me that herself. None of that erased what he did. It did change what happened next. I had learned not to confuse remorse with repair. Remorse is a feeling. Repair is a pattern someone keeps when nobody is clapping for it. Megan and Owen insisted on sending a modest amount back each month once their regular bills settled. I told them they did not have to prove anything to me. Megan said she knew. She wanted the payments to reflect what they could actually afford, not what Caleb had promised for them. We wrote the amount down so nobody could rewrite it later. It was small. That was fine. The larger responsibility stayed with Caleb. He had made the secret decisions. He was the one who needed to rebuild what those decisions had cost. At the end of the month, I did not move straight home. I extended the studio for another month. Caleb was disappointed, but he did not argue. That mattered. We were not back to normal, and I stopped treating normal as the prize. The prize was being able to believe the facts in front of me. The house search stayed paused. I no longer looked at real estate listings during lunch. Someday, I might want that brick ranch dream again. I was not going to use a mortgage to prove a marriage had healed before it had. 2 months after the wedding, another bank statement arrived by mail. I opened it at the same kitchen counter during one of my visits home. The page was almost boring. Rent, utilities, groceries. Caleb's scheduled deposit back into savings. No wedding vendors. No mystery transfers. No expense I had to decode after the fact. I ran my finger down the page and felt something I had not expected. Not triumph. Relief. A boundary is not proven when you announce it. It is proven when life starts arranging itself around the fact that you meant it. Caleb and I were still married when I folded that statement and put it in the envelope with the first one. We were also still living apart. I did not promise a reunion date. He did not get automatic access to my income because he was sorry. Megan got married without the wedding she first imagined, and she was happy anyway. Caleb lost the role he had built for himself as the man who could fix everything with someone else's resources. I got back something more useful than a perfect plan. I got the right to make my own yes mean yes, and my no mean no. So here is the question I would ask after living through it. What would be harder for you to forgive? The money, the lie, or the fact that someone used your name to make the lie easier? I used to think trust meant not checking. Now I think trust means never being punished for asking what is true. The last statement did not promise me a perfect marriage. It gave me something smaller and more honest. Every line on it was expected. For that season of my life, expected was enough.